Hi, I'm Tyson.
I'm Colin.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Adam.
And we're the Gamesmiths, and we just got done playing Ghost Peppers, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about our experience with it. To start, Ryan's got some thoughts.
Yeah, so first of all, I enjoyed the game. I had fun with it. I enjoyed the theme. The pepper eating contest was fun. I enjoyed the mechanics of the ectoplasm cubes and being able to like bank up and add a little bit of strategy in that way. There were a lot of I enjoyed it was simple, it was real straightforward, it was easy enough to learn and get going quick enough. And then it had, simple enough, but then it had some strategies. The more you played it, we kind of saw things that worked and moves that worked and stuff like that. And they required certain cards to set up and everything like that. And sometimes with the limited drafting pool, sometimes they were there, sometimes they weren't. You didn't know if the strategy was not available or if your opponent took it. But there were just a few. So I think it did a good job of giving you just kind of a handful of strategies to try and draft for, and then just see kind of how your hand plays out. So I think overall it was a pretty quality experience, a pretty good kind of like quick drafting game that had some depth and some strategy to it, but was still pretty quick. And I found after playing a couple hands, like my picks in the hand mattered, and or like what I was picking, I felt mattered. As far as the rules go, there was the little bit of unclarity where it came to how I can use cubes about cards that are already down. So things like when you're doing possession, or when you're doing
a haunt,
or you have a haunted water and you put the cubes on it. Do the cubes stay from round to round? Do they only go on? Because that's the thing. I don't know. Do I put them on the first time and then they're there the second time? If they're not there the first time, do I get to place them the second time? Like, you guys all seemed fine like that, but I didn't really know one way. It wasn't really clear one way or the other. Also, it wasn't clear one way or the other how we're supposed to decide who goes first. We just rolled a die. I looked through the instructions. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see any indication on who goes first, and then who goes first in the second and third rounds. And if that is random every time, or if it's determined by the winner or the loser or whatever.
I do want to touch on one of the things you said earlier, actually, that you liked. I actually really did like that there were several viable strategies, and the more you drafted, the more you could see, oh, this is a strategy I can take in this game. I can go and try and go attack heavy, or I can go defense heavy, or I can do these things. And if I get the right cards for them, if I get the boo, or if I get the transform, then I can do these different strategies. And there were different ways to do them. Or I liked that Colin and I both just tried and failed on the stealing ectoplasm route because we just we just didn't draft the right hand when the other person drafted that way, but it was still a viable strategy as we saw you guys play, stealing ectoplasm back and forth, which I liked.
I found the attacker version of the steal ectoplasm worked better because I could attack before he could put it on his card. The beer one, after he loaded up his ectoplasm, if you responded, you might not have.
Yeah, it seemed like the best time to use that was between the rounds, that you had the banked up ectoplasms from winning the first round and having those two, so he could immediately play that, get value out of it. But yeah, the beer was just not as good of a card as I wish it would have been.
In our game.
In our games, yeah. I had two of them, and there's just like, well, that didn't work.
Yeah, it's hard to do defensively like that, but it does work as a direct counter to the jalapeno, because you're going to take it, and then the beer can take it back.
The next time I was like, we're not doing this again.
Right, to stop me from being able to just play a three right back at you.
I'd like to say something to one of your earlier comments, too, about the drafting. Like, Tyson and I don't draft as much as Ryan and Colin do, so I don't play as many drafting games, but I've played plenty of them, and I felt like this is the most complicated, like in-depth. It's not complicated, but it's in-depth and interesting when it comes to drafting. It feels like a very full use of the drafting mechanic with such a small game.
Well, and I like the three of each
so
type.
Important. Yeah, it felt so important how we were drafting. With every new, like the very last game we played, I didn't, in my first initial hand to draft from, I didn't have a single power. And so I figured there'd be some in the game, but he started off looking at all the powers, and I didn't see any of them. So it was very hard to start my strategy thinking, because I usually started my strategies in the previous games with what power is in there and how could I best. Like if there was a
Right.
haunt with a big milk or a couple milks, I'd take the haunt first because I knew I'd at least get one of those milks back. So seeing some of those powers initially really helped me, and looking at a hand completely full of numbers, and actually all very low numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too, I was like, how do I pick the strategy? This is terrible. And he had a lot of high numbers and powers, and so I think even just playing a few games of this, I feel like the drafting mechanic really, really, really works. And you guys would know better, but to me, it felt like a very thorough, full use of the drafting mechanic.
Yeah, there are like drafting done well is there are different lines to victory, and depending on which cards you pull, the different lines become better or worse. Like there's the big haunt strategy, but if there's no haunt or there's no high defense cards, then that's not a good strategy. But it's always there. And so, like, it forces you.
It's not
both,
always there.
Well, it's in the game. Like,
Yeah.
there's a possibility of it, and there are always going to be at least like one of the pieces. But you need like 2 or 3 pieces. And so,
Well,
yeah,
that
like
Boo,
that's what
Haunt,
makes it
Possess
that good.
combination's
Right.
really awesome. One of you, I think
Yeah,
it
I
was you,
did it,
Colin, who
yeah.
went with that.
Yeah,
And
you did.
After
Yeah, it was great.
Well, after I saw that and I saw those powers in the deck, I was like, ooh, if I can get, I knew Boo was in there, and if he took Boo and I could get Haunt and Possess, I could counter with some huge.
Yeah, and then
number that
I
hopefully
knew
he
I was
could
only going to have to
beat.
use 1 card per turn, and I'd be able to bank the rest of them and use them if I had to. So that was really nice.
So I think this game has a ton of for me it has a lot of replayability because I'd even play it again thinking like, all right, what's going to pop up this time, and how do I build a great
and the small
strategy out
amount-
of that?
The few amount of cards there are, like number cards, allows you to figure out that strategy pretty well. I liked that it wasn't like the decks weren't too big, and I mean we played Dueling Club and had the experience that deck was 52 cards. I really liked that
Yeah.
this was a shorter
Yeah,
deck.
it was much better.
And it gave an experience that I was like, oh, I didn't have to worry. It allowed me to work towards some of these strategies a little better because the amount of, is this strategy going to be viable? Kind of like Ryan says, it's in every game, and not the fact that every game's going to have that strategy as a viable strategy, but it has that potential a lot higher, and so it makes it feel like if you're metagaming, you're like, oh, I'm going to work towards this, but then you always have that hand dealt to you that, kind of like Adam was saying, well, I just got all these numbers, and none of my plans can really hinge on any of this right now, so where do I go? And so it gives you that kind of moment of, oh,
They were all
I
4s
gotta
and under
tweak.
with 1 red 5 in there. And I was
Yeah.
like, what do I do with this? Like, how do I build a strategy? So I felt like I
Yeah.
had to burn a card, not knowing. So I just picked the highest card in there,
right.
wanting to see what came from his hand. But like, there's a game called Tides of Time, which is a drafting game. It's a very small, it's like a 12-card game. And it's just a heads-up drafting game. And it's really fun too. So you don't have to have a lot of cards to make an interesting drafting game. You don't necessarily have to not know what the other person has. You just have to have that fun way of like, what are they going to pick and what am I going to pick? And I think this has a lot more depth than Tides of Time, which has been a very popular game. But it's also got more cards. But I all that to just confirm what these guys were saying. Reducing the card count is a huge plus.
Yeah. And I think, and as well as the ectoplasm, the
Yes.
ability to like bank up stuff and put another strategic resource in there that carries from round
Yeah,
to
it was
round,
game-changing.
added a lot of depth to it. And I'd honestly say the worst part of this game was the like shuffling up the 2 decks and redealing in between each round and then drafting. Like that's a little bit of a process. But once you understand that there's kind of a strategy to that. Once you understand the strategy to the drafting and you're trying to figure out your plays and your opponent's plays and stuff like that, it becomes, a lot more, a more integral part of the game. So I think maybe just that as an observer, I wasn't as into the drafting part of it, but I don't think that
You
really.
might not pull this out though as a.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
you're not
Yeah.
going to have 4 people just waiting to play this game. You're going to just
Yeah,
the
this
two
would
of
just
you,
be
and you're
for-
going to be
for
engaged in that
two real
shuffle
quick.
process. So
Yeah.
I don't
think
see
for
that as a
quick, like,
problem.
Heads up, like lunch break kind of game.
Yeah.
I
I'd
think it
totally
works.
play this.
I
I
think
think
it
this
really
game
well.
really works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
it's
though
good.
your critique is more towards drafting in general than this game specifically, because I've noticed that about drafting in general. Anytime
that's
a
drafting,
game has
of course.
drafting,
Yeah.
I don't like the amount of time it takes.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that's why I
actually
kind
fits
of
this
pulled
one okay
myself.
because of that.
That's why I
right?
kind of pulled myself back from
Yeah,
that
yeah.
critique because there's just one, and you're not waiting a lot, and it's back and forth, and
Right.
it's just not. Yeah, it's not when we were watching, it felt like
Yeah.
it took a little long, but when I was
Agreed.
doing it, no, it felt like it was just fine. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's why I kind of walked that back. Yeah.
Adam was talking about the powers, and I want to touch on the powers a little bit. I liked the powers a lot, and I think my biggest complaint in this game as it currently stands is more of an aesthetic issue. These powers are very text heavy, and I feel, and I could be wrong, and you could have already tried this at some point, but to me, I feel there are ways to reduce the amount of text on here, potentially even replace them with symbols, and make it so that this is just quick to look at. Because I found myself reading these cards every time I got them.
I did as well.
Not just like the first
Even
time.
when they're in your hand, making sure
Yeah.
that you're doing it right, and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
even when you're playing them, like reading, like, oh shoot,
Did I play the
actually
right
play this
one?
correctly?
Yeah.
Did I draft the right one?
And
Did
then
I,
you're giving
yeah.
away information if you actually didn't want to play that the
Exactly.
way you wanted to.
I think that part of that could just come from tightening up the rules a little bit with these, just because they kind of work, they all work just a little bit differently to the point where you can't really template them super well. You know, where you have like, oh, this is a haunt card, play at any time, or all haunt cards are play with one drink.
Yeah.
And this one's like play with one pepper, play by itself, play with one pepper, play with one drink. So it makes it a little hard to kind of template them.
No, I think you
like,
could throw some symbols and maybe even
Yeah.
put a reference card or two to clarify
Yeah.
that kind of thing potentially. But I just think there's some way to reduce the amount of text on these cards. Maybe not remove it entirely, but at least make it so that it's easier to recognize that, oh, this is the boo. Or even having symbols that help me remember this card does this thing. Because
Yeah.
looking at it and saying boo, I have to think, what is boo? What was that every time?
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, I don't... Go
And
ahead.
then as far as transform goes, the second option, it can be a lifeline, but it's like the last thing that I want to do. So if that wasn't even an option in the game, I wouldn't mind it.
If I had more cubes, I would have used it as a single attack. I wanted to do that, but I didn't know if I'd have
But
cubes.
the thing is, like,
just
they
to
only
keep them
counts like
coming out and
Yeah.
keep draining
you
your
at most have
opponent.
like 4 or 5 cubes, so it's still only going to amount to one of the better cards instead of like using Chipotle that can get up to like a 6 or an 8 if
Yeah.
you have all those ectoplasm. So if it had a little more benefit, I would be more inclined to use it. But I thought the Transform was one of the weaker cards you had. I didn't really want to play it when it came up in draft. That was the last one I would want to pick. So I don't know. I didn't. And even with the theme, it doesn't seem to fit any kind of like ghosty. I just don't feel like ghosts really transform into other things.
It's kind of magical. You're transforming.
But I don't know. The boo and possess and
But I could see what he's saying.
like
Chill, haunt, boo, possess.
transform. It seems more like a werewolf or something, or a
Yeah,
vampire. Like I don't know. I just didn't feel like it fit the theme.
That was one thing for me, is that I felt the theme. So at first, when I approached this theme and I heard ghost
can
peppers.
can I say something real
Sure,
quick?
go ahead.
Just I totally respect your opinion about it. Just for the record, though, I actually like the transform card. And I think it works.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I think
did-
I'm
Mechanic-
not
like
trying to
it.
negate what you're
Yeah.
saying. That's valuable
Yeah.
information. They should know you didn't like it.
Yeah, sure.
I think
I do like
mechanically,
it.
I think mechanically it's fine.
I actually
think that-
enjoyed it. I think
yeah.
there's a really fun, complicated strategy.
No, I think
to
mechanically
say
it's all
more than
pretty
that.
solid, but and I think this is what
That's-
Tyson's going to get.
but yeah,
It
go
doesn't
ahead.
quite
I
like
just
when
wanted
I
to say
think
that before you move on.
you know. I actually do like chill. I take back chill and haunt. I think work pretty well. Boo
Yeah.
and possess. I'm not quite sure that those quite thematically fit with what they do.
It could be scare. It could be, but yeah. I see
Well,
what
I
you're
just
saying,
mean like
yeah.
like these like chill. That makes sense. You just chill. Like I chill your pepper. I don't have to. That works. Haunt. This sticks around, so that works for me. Boo like doesn't quite.
I mean, I could
You know.
make a stretch and kind of abstract it a little bit, saying that you have to play 2 cards, meaning that you're extra scared.
You're
so
scared, so you're like, oh my god!
You drop it, or like there's some
yeah,
stretches.
I liked
Yeah.
it.
I think from a thematic standpoint, Transform to me, I would agree with Colin. It seems one of the more thematically loose ones. But so what I was saying is that as I approached this game, as you were reading what the experience was in the rules, thematically, at first I was like, I don't know if this theme is actually going to be something that I engage with much. And I mean, there's not much to engage with from the get-go, to be fair. But as I played it, I was like, oh, this is really cute. This is really fun. I really like the experience. And I get it. I get that kind of playful, fun, vibrant experience. But there were a few things that thematically felt off to me, including, like we've already talked about, the Transform. The beers felt a little bit off to me because I couldn't tell. You've got smoothies, you've got milk, you've got lemonade, and then you got beer.
It's like a kid game, and then you have an
then
adult
you throw an adult
element,
beverage
and
in
you're
there,
like, if you're expecting kids to play this, they're going to feel a little uncomfortable playing a beer card anyway, I feel like.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is a game that could be played by a large group, a large demographic of ages. And so I understand the desire to throw that in there, but at the same time, because the strategy here could be played with a really deep thinker, or you could just draft cards and play what you get and see what happens, which is fine too. But again, thematically there were some things that were just off to me a little bit, but not. I think those were the biggest ones.
So I see what you're saying. The art to me makes it seem like a kind of a family-friendly kid game, which I think could be a cool angle because it's a great way to introduce people to drafting. For the kids, it's simple and easy. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just picking cards, and then it's numbers versus numbers, so kids can totally play that. But for an adult, 2 adults can go play it, and it's got deep enough strategy to be fun for adults. So I think it could be cool to go with that strategy. Other than that, the art is the only thing that makes me think this is kind of a kid family game. But actually playing through it, all I remember is like hot wing eating contests that I've been to, and those are always at bars or pubs or whatever. And I'm watching 2 people, because I can't hang with the hot stuff, but I'm watching multiple people try to one-up each other with the
like this kind of
hotness,
thing's more of like a
drinks and there
college
are
kid
beer-
activity.
Yeah. So the beers make a lot of sense there, but I do agree the art looks more fun kid family to me, and then I could see why the beer doesn't fit, but the theme feels like college bar.
To be fair, I didn't feel that from the art. It
Playing with
wasn't.
the peppers.
When we played prototypes, I ignored the art almost entirely. It was the names and what we're doing that was doing it. That was making and you're doing this play on words where you've got ghost peppers, and the idea is that you've got this cute ghost and it's a pepper, and I get the play on words is kind of.
And
I would.
possessing. It was kitty.
I would. I would lean
There's just
more.
a little confusion there,
Right,
Because
yeah.
to me,
There's
this
a
is what I
disconnect.
did in college. This is honestly the stuff I did in college. We would do dumb things to try to one up each other, and trading peppers with each other to see who can burn someone out. That's a college game. We used to bike joust, or we used to just dumb stuff.
Well, and
so to me, that's not a kid thing. This is not a kid game, but there are certain things like this cute little ghost pepper. To me, it's the art that makes it confused.
Well, you kind of have to decide. Like you can make it look like. You kind of need to decide one way or the other is like lean into kind of the ghost pepper thing, where you got the like cartoony ghosts and stuff like that, and the devil's tongue, and make them all kind of cartoon, anthropomorphized little dudes, or make them look super hot and like sweating, and do a picture of like somebody who just eaten one of these, like a cartoon who just eaten a pepper, like sweating a bunch and stuff like that.
It's just more
but then it's more of a.
But
then you're talking more about like, are we talking about that one-upsmanship? But then, like I said, we're ghosts, so I
coming
kind
out of the ears
right.
and-
There will
It's
need
kinda
to be
like
some
Adult
clarification
Swim
one
kinda
way
game.
or the other,
Yeah.
I think. And just to be clear again, I want to reiterate the fact that it was not the art that I'm talking about. It was the delivery of the theme of the game within the rules, as well as some of the names of things in here, like the drinks. And Like if you're playing drinks,
like smoothies and lemonade, and then you have
Yeah.
beer.
Like, and I get that milk would be in there to
Yeah, of
like
course.
in a pepper eating contest.
Right.
You're gonna have milk
It's the
regardless.
best, yeah.
It's the
No.
best.
You
So,
can just drink vinegar, I
Yeah.
guess.
Right.
but I mean, like,
Pure
yeah,
base.
There's
it
lots,
was
there's
more
lots
than
of
the art.
choices
Is all I'm
that
trying
you
to
could
say.
you could substitute out beer.
Yeah.
I think
And you don't
regardless
have
of
to.
what we agree on or disagree on, I think we all agree that there's a little confusion here
Yeah.
in the theme.
I think maybe the theme's just a little bit off. I think overall you have a really solid game here. It does a good job of teaching people the basics of drafting. It gives them different strategies that are available and more or less powerful based on the actual card pool, and teaches you to track what your opponent's picking, and makes it easy enough that you only have one opponent as opposed to 4, 5, 6 opponents, and you only have 2 packs of cards as opposed to 5, 6, 7 packs of cards that
Well,
you're
I'd
you're
like to
tracking
speak to my
around.
experience with the game.
Uh-huh.
I liked the fact that that I wasn't tracking mostly what I was doing and not what Tyson was doing. I was so concerned about not having enough pepper cards, then I would run out. So I was really being conscious about what I was picking. I wasn't really worrying about what he was picking to counter. I was just trying to come up with my own strategy. And I really liked the fact that there was so much hidden information that you didn't know what strategy was actually going to be there, and that there was enough cards in your hand that it was hard to tell what your opponent had taken. So I never knew if I was going to win or lose. When I made a move, I really was like, I don't know what's going to happen. He still has 5 or 6 cards in his hand, and maybe he has something that can counter what I'm doing. So I was, especially since you can't put 2 pepper cards down at once. Like, I don't know how many defense cards he has. So
Right.
you really have to lean in hard or eat it and lose. And I thought it was very fun, and I just didn't know what was going to happen. I felt like I was at the cusp of losing, and then I won out of nowhere. And that surprise was a great
Really
factor
great,
for
yeah.
me.
I felt that same thing. Particularly, I also saw that be demonstrated when Adam went full into his defense strategy to try and throw it around. He threw basically all of his cards out, thinking, "I might win this. I might want."
If he had a chill, I was done.
And that was a really, for me, even as an observer, that was like, oh, what's going to happen? And that was a really cool experience, I thought. That the game can provide that. And just like Colin's saying, you don't know until it comes to the end. Like, even with Ryan having a few cards left in his hand, it kind of fell flat that, oh, well, I can't play a card. But at the same time, you didn't see that coming. Like, it wasn't, like, obvious. And I like
Yeah,
that
as the winner,
experience.
yeah. So I'd say this is a great improvement over Dueling Wizards?
Club.
Dueling Club. Yeah, it was above and beyond that. Very tight, tuned, and the ectoplasm was a fun little addition. So
I think working on the theme is key here, because I think this is like a really strong game. Actually, I think it's very interesting. I actually just want to play it again on my own, which most of our I shouldn't say that. No, most of the games
Are not there yet.
Still need more
well, we
They're just
play
not
games that
there
are early
yet.
in testing. So most games need a lot of development or fine tuning, and that's the point. But this, it feels there. I'm not drawn to the art but I am drawn to the theme. Theme's really funny. So maybe like Ryan was saying, add some more of that humor into the cards with caricatures and cartoony
But I think
faces.
he's
and-
pitching this one to publishers, so
Oh, the
he's not
publisher
worrying
picked this?
about it. No. This is not with a publisher.
Oh,
I'm saying
okay.
that as a
And he's not
designer, you don't
kickstarting
want to put
okay,
money into art. So
but he's not. You don't think he's Kickstarter?
no,
Oh, okay.
he's pitching it.
Well, then, yeah, to Tyson's point, then never mind. I think this is really fun, and I hope it gets picked up, and great job.
Yeah. So overall, I think we have a solid game here. Might want to tweak the theme a little bit, but other than that, it's mechanically very sound. Helps teach people the basis of drafting in a kind of quick, fun, good time little game. So good job. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.